Okay. The first thing we're going to do, just to make life easy for you or introduce something slightly new or different, I'm not going to require you to make these, but if you want, you can make these little pressed trays as your project. It is a non-thinking, no fluff project. You don't have to have a whole lot of technical ability other than to throw out a slab. So if that's something you want to do for this, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. I threw two out yesterday, and they're going to seem similar, but I did them in different ways. So why don't you come on over. Okay. So these are just press molds or drape molds, and they're just cut out of wood, just like that, with the little angles. There's a whole box of them. This box, I'm going to put on the bottom of this card here. There's a whole box of them. There's a whole bunch of sizes and dimensions. And you can kind of choose what you want to do. And it's pretty simple. So I'm going to grab my clay over that way. And we're going to throw out a slab. Down. This should be enough for probably 2 of these. So depending on what size you're doing, if we're going for this size again, it needs to be just a little bit wider than it, and whatever length you want. Usually I make these just a tiny bit thicker, just because you are going to be stretching them out again. Okay. So with one like this, if you want texture on it, great. The point of this project is to do, and I've listed them up here, transfers, wet and dry, screen printing, jelly printing, masking, stencils, and foam stamps. So you're going to want to have blank spots. If you want to put some texture on there, you can as well. And then we're going to take this and my needle tool. Went somewhere. Is there one in there? And I'm just going to cut this big. You can cut these shaped, so you could come in here and probably a little bit big of an overlap, but we'll see what happens. So it could have a shaped edge to it. It could be square, you choose. And then for this is going to be a press mold. And I'm going to take a stack of foam. It probably doesn't have to be that thick. Put somewhere in there, because you want it to be able to push down pretty far. And you're going to take your clay, put it on there, and your piece, put it in the center. You're going to push down and really give it some push. If you want, you can come in here and compress your corners up. Like so. And then you take that off and set it there. Now, the press molds, depending on how big your sidewalls are, depends on if they're going to flop open or not. So if they're really big, you tend to want to flop open. So if I did one like this, because there's so much clay over here, it's going to want to lay down more. Okay. So what I would do is leave it up there for, I don't know, half an hour or so, 20 minutes. Sometimes you'll come in with a little chunk of clay and stick that under there to keep it pressed forward. You can also do that once it's out. These molds, some have holes, some do not. So the ones with holes are a little easier to get out than the ones without. But again, if you want to come in and maybe you want this to go in like that, you can just prop that up like so. You can clean it up later. You can also do nice straight sides and come in and cut this when it's leather hard. So you don't have to do the curves now. It's completely up to you. All right, let's set this aside. All right, another way to do this same thing is we're going to take this chunk of clay here. I'm going to move my foam. And this is a drop mold. So we're going to take a stand like this. And you can do it with this one. You just have to build it up. You would find something to build it up on. We'll do it on this. Set it like so. Again, if you're putting texture on, think about where your texture's going. If I drop this down, or when I pressed it in, this is the inside. Okay, so when I drop it on, the inside is going to be that way. So if my texture is pointed down, that means your texture is going to be on the inside if you have texture. And then you're just going to come here, widen that out just a little bit, and we're going to drop it. And then you can take your hands, you can take a sponge, you can take a rib, and you can come in here and compress these down. Pretty much the same thing. Okay, get those corners nice and tight. If that's what you want. I'm going to take my needle tool, and I'm just going to take it in. You can kind of see there's a line here. I'm going to come right under the line, and then come up, and then cut out. And I'm just using the board as my guide. I'm going to come and clean up my rim later. You can use a needle tool, a fettling knife. I wouldn't use an X-Acto knife, but I'm sure one of you will, and it'll be okay. All right, so we can flip that over, and it's kind of sucked tight to it. You can clean it up a hair. Again, the bigger your walls, the more likely they are to flop. So if I take this out now, okay, that should do okay, but if it's flopping, you can support those. I wouldn't come in and clean up these rims for probably, I don't know, a day. Like this one here is starting to get cleaned up, or sorry, starting to get firm. You can come in and clean that up, okay? Now this project, you do not have to do one of these. If you get to this and you want to play around with all these things, the transfers and things, and want to do it on another form, you go right ahead, okay? I'm just trying to make this as simple as possible so that you can actually just move forward. Okay, I'm gonna put these back. Any questions on these? Pretty straightforward. I think the last thing I'd cover, check your corners and make sure that they're not splitting. If they're really thin right here, make sure that when it becomes leather hard, like this one's getting there, and I think my corners are okay, but when it gets there, you could come in and you could score just a tiny little coil in there and spread that out so it makes it stronger. I don't feel like my microphone's working today. Okay, let's talk about transfers. Let's start with a foam stamp real quickly. So this would be like the most simple of transfers. You're gonna grab yourself a foam stamp. If you have foam stamps at home, you can order foam stamps if there's something specific you want, or I have some up on my cart here. Just gonna paint that on. Let's see how this works. Dry for a second. This is my nice brand new wet one. It can go right on there. Set that in there. Press down. I kind of moved, so it's going to be smeared. So let's do that again. Set it down softly, hang out there. And pull it up. No, it's still smeared. But it's alright. So there's your pumpkin. There's the first one. So you can play around with that. Alright, the next one is going to be masking and stencils. We've done this before, some of you in multiple classes. Masking just means to block off, and a stencil is the opposite of that. It's to open up, to block off the outside. Anyone ever seen or know who Banksy is? He's a graffiti artist. He uses stencils. And actually a lot of graffiti artists do, because they can run out there, throw them up, and there's an underpass in Springville right now. That has some positive affirmation sayings graffitied onto it, and my 12-year-old's home. Let's go do more. Okay. Well, technically it's still illegal. Whatever that means, even if it's positive. And all of these things are just gateways to whatever it is you want to accomplish. And the more you experiment, the more you go, oh, this is what I want to do. Okay, we'll use that as a mask. We'll use this as a stencil. That picture I showed you today, that's from Tim Kowalsnik, I believe that's how you say his last name. Tim Ceramics, and he does a lot of these transfers. So I do want to actually do that first. So we're going to talk about transfers really quickly because they need to dry. So right here, I created a couple of printouts. And I'm going to use underglaze on them. So this is just printed off of a laser printer. And I'm going to come in here and paint the white spots inside with underglaze. I'm trying to be careful, but at the same time, there's wax and toner on the underglaze. Sorry, on the print-off piece of paper, and it will push away a little bit your underglaze. So you can put that on. All right. Set that aside. If you're going to do words, they have to be printed in reverse. Just one good coat. It should look pretty thick, not cracking thick, but you shouldn't be able to see the paper through it. Smaller paintbrush to do inside here. While I'm doing this, do you have any questions, comments? Now we're turning these into dry transfers. You're gonna say dry, but I get them wet here in a second. The difference to me between a dry and a wet transfer is a wet transfer, and this is pretty much a one-time use thing. I paint it and I use it. All right, we'll do this one too. A wet transfer is I'm going to paint it on, barely let it dry, and then press it. I'll show you that in a second. With this, I'm going to let them dry, and then I'm actually going to get them wet again and transfer them. side, let them dry. So if you're doing something you're like, I really want a design, you can search it up. You can come find me, kind of look through it. All right, let's go to masking real quickly. When I do masking, it can be complex shapes, it can be simple shapes. We'll start with this. Here. That down. You can do layers with this. One of the reasons why you spray it is so that it softens up the fibers in the paper, so it'll bend or contour around whatever you're doing. One over the pumpkin. Take some red. Kind of be careful. If you've pushed it down well, it shouldn't leak under too much. If it does, you can come back in with an X-Acto knife and scrape it up. Okay, everyone does this slightly different. I'm just gonna let that sit for a little bit. Some people hit it with a hairdryer. Some people pull it off instantly. So instantly, you would just come in and be like, pull that off, right? No big deal. And then this is an example of a wet transfer. So it's wet, you bring it down here. And then it's going to transfer that information there. It's one of the ways I get a lot of layers of underglaze onto my projects. I just take whatever I'm doing and transfer it either onto the same pot or a different pot. It just depends on what I'm trying to do, and I just kind of let my intuition go, and sometimes it's right and sometimes it's less right. And if you're doing multiple pieces, you can like put them on multiple spots just to get those little things happening. All right, come in here. Grab that. Because you never know, what if that one little ripped star corner is the thing you like most on your piece? All right, so here we have a blocked off star, right? And you could do that lots of ways, lots of times. You choose. We could also take that same cutout, get that wet, put that on there, and then color the star pretty crisp and clean into its own color. Now I'd wait till this dries to do that. So those are masks. This is a stencil. It's really the same thing. So I just made this piece so it's soft, so be extra careful you're not bumping into it. Okay, since we have the red out, we'll do red. Take that off just gently. So when I'm doing them, I'm trying to leave a little extra around because I want to be able to fairly easily pick those out. Now, if you struggle with making decisions, if you struggle with thinking it has to be perfect, if you struggle with being like, I don't think it'll look good, or I don't know if it will look good, when you're exploring, you should really push some of that out and not worry so much about that. So now we have that. Okay, so now we have a star over the pumpkin because, it will be a little bit translucent, so as it dries and fires, you'll be able to see that blue come through just a little bit, which should be good. Okay, so far we've done foam stamps, stencils, masking, wet transfers, and wet transfers can be more specific as well. They don't have to be just whatever you have left over put on. You can make them on purpose. We're almost there with our dry transfers. This one's ready, so the shine's off of it. Okay, and you're gonna go, but you're just getting it re-wet. So why can't I just transfer it? What we want it to do is dry all the way so that the fibers of the paper and the underglaze are really kind of connected. Then when I add water to it again and rub it down, it will come off in a pretty concise way. So we're gonna come here, spray that, and then I usually wait just a second. You don't want to be soaking wet. Set it right here, press down. You can use a rubber rib, you can use a pretty dry sponge, but you're going to want to rub that in. See how it's looking. So we come here and we peel, because that was wet, that was bad. Okay, we'll go with this one on a non-wet piece. Sit for just a second. While we're doing that, and it's just gonna sit, we'll do this one too. Just let it sit for a second. Oh, that's because they're all over here. So we have these other things, which are screen prints. washed them all yesterday. Does anyone know what screen printing is? Has anyone ever heard of screen printing or what we do with screen printing? Put your hand up. Does anyone know what it is? How many of you wear t-shirts with logos on them? Okay, those are screen printed. So they take a screen, they put an image on it, and then they push ink through it. How many of you have ever used a computer? They screen print motherboards. So they screen print the metal that runs your computers. And all it is, again, is pushing something through a screen to create some sort of an image. Okay, let's see if this will transfer. So we're going to set it right here. Press it down. And we just let that sit, just so it took some of the wetness out of it so it doesn't smear. Hopefully we can see it because it's yellow. Should have done blue. Okay, it's getting there. These are kind of like temporary tattoos, right? You put them on, you rub them off, and the paper sticks, and the paper pulls off. Less dangerous to your skin and health. Right? Okay, the yellow is hard to see. It is there. Okay, and it does say MMHS on there. And when it fires, the yellow will be a different color than the clay. Maybe we'll just do one real quickly with a dark color. Let it dry for a second. One of the things I love about these, though, is it doesn't transfer all the information, which means you'll have little bumps or cracks and kind of antiques it from the start. Depending on how you all do with this, if everyone gets into this, I have some professionally printed screens or papers where we can pull them out and use them as well. And they're tighter patterns and things like that. So we could pull them out for another project. Now there's a star on there. Okay. So screen printing. There's three ways we can screen print. We can direct print. We can transfer print. And then we can jelly print, which is also a transfer print. So first off, we're going to grab our screens, and you can hardly tell they're there. This top is a bird. Okay, so we'll pass that around. And there's 3 or 4 on there. This is an elephant on a ball. So you can pass that around. That's a leaf and some like seeds that are floating. So I'm going to take this and you can use a brush. I usually just use my finger. You're going to hold this down and you're going to push through that screen. And you got to hold it pretty tight so that it doesn't wiggle. And you have that there, okay? Then we're going to do just what we did with these transfers. We're going to let it dry. We're going to get it wet. We're going to put it onto whatever we're going to put it onto. Okay. Just do a couple of these. Okay.
Wait, do you have to do it on paper? Can you just do it on the clay?
No, so I'm going to show you the 3. So this is a transfer print, and then we'll put it on. We can do a direct print. So we can come on here, put this down. And print directly onto the clay. Okay, now there's that right there. Which is good. If you mess up though, it causes a few problems. Doesn't mean you can't fix it or just go with it. And then there's a jelly print, and there should be a ton more of these, which means the last time one of my classes did these, they didn't put them back, and then they got thrown away. So we have these. We do have this here, which is a big one. We can cut it into those kind of sizes. That's about the sizes you'll do. And that's some sort of a tree. Put it on there. I think the most important part is to not get the screen to move. Yeah, that didn't work. This could be clogged. I think it is. All right, so that one needs to be rewashed. not wanting to work. Let's find a new one. It hasn't been used. Okay, and then you're gonna grab whatever it is. So this is a bone dry piece. One of the things that are nice about these jelly prints is they will wrap around round forms. So not just flat, so you can wrap them around. You can also do that with these, but direct printing, see, that's going to be a lot harder to do. You have to hold it, and it's possible, a lot harder. And you choose what level of difficulty you want to do. Either one of those. Okay, so play around with that. Make sure I've covered everything. So transfers, wet, dry, screen print, jelly print, masking, stencils. All these screen printing stuff is going to be in one bucket, and it is just, well, I'll move some of these and put them on here. So it'll be on the cart for this project. What else do we need to cover? But you should play around with them. It's one of those things that, again, the more you play around with it, the more you understand it, and then you can not do something. You can go, oh, I don't like that. I do like that. Smear it all over the place. We got the tree transferred. So, any questions? Okay, I'll clean up my screens, put them away. You have the rest of the class to work on what you were doing, to start this project, whatever you choose. Again, if you don't get to this, that's okay. But you have to account for what you've been doing. And if you expect full points on your teapot, but you've missed 5 class periods, you will not get it. It was a 5 class period project, and now it's a 10 class period project, or up to. So make sure you utilize your time wisely. If you wanted to start over today, well, not a lot of time today, but you could do that. Keep what you have so we can see it, start over. So, any questions from you? Okay, go ahead and get to it.